IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling on this Tuesday. Hope you are having a great day today. Man, it got warm outside today, Vince. It actually feels like summer could be coming.
Yeah, it kind of started last evening, and all of a sudden we were like, it got a little toasty yesterday, and then now today it was just toasty all day. It was toasty all night. Yeah.
I went out and rode the riding lawnmower this afternoon.
Yes.
Grass was a little bit browner today, and the wind was blowing all the grass back in my face on a hot day. So yeah, it was a good time. So
how the upper class cuts their lawn.
That's exactly right. Well, we're doing something a little bit different today. Start bench cut is the theme.
Yes.
For today's show. What'd you think of this when you saw this? When I said,
I was like, oh, there's going to be people that probably don't like me anymore. That was
I started with the one that I thought might cause the most controversy, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So, start bench cut. I'm going to toss out 3 former Notre Dame players or coaches, and we have to decide which one we would start, which one we would bench, which one we would cut. Now, I did all former. I did none current because honestly, I felt like if we did current, everyone would just always say that's the starter. Like the recency bias.
Yeah.
So
you do toe the line with some very recent players, but they are none of them current.
I did mixed in a couple very recents.
Yes.
So
and coaches for that matter.
Yep. That is true. So let's go right out of the chute. Let's do some quarterbacks. Start bench cut. Ian Book, Riley Leonard, Brady Quinn. I'm curious to see which way you go with this.
Well, this was fairly easy for me, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, we all know who I'm going to cut. Okay. Ian Book gets cut. The only question is who you starting and who are you benching, right? Riley Leonard is an absolute winner. And I love his demeanor and all of those things. Winner. But I am going to start Brady Quinn. I'm going to bench Riley Leonard, and Ian Books. He doesn't have a prayer seeing the field with this particular grouping. So
I just feel like if you switched, and I agree with you, by the way, Brady Quinn is the starter. Riley Leonard gets benched. Ian Book gets cut, and everyone's going to say, oh, you're going to cut the guy with the most wins in program history. I feel like if you switched Brady Quinn and Ian Book, like Quinn would, like, especially considering the fact that, like, for where they were in time. Like, so Ian Book goes back to 2005, 2006, and obviously Quinn's career started before that, but those were the 2 main years that he put up all of his numbers. So, like, if you put Book there and Quinn where Ian Book was, Quinn is going to throw more touchdown passes because he'd get an extra year to start, so he would have even more. They probably win even more games. They already won a lot of games, but in terms of significant games, I feel like they had a chance to win a couple more significant games. And I don't know that Ian Book still would have been okay in Charlie Weiss's system, but again, like, I don't think that they come any closer to beating Ohio State or LSU in the Fiesta and Sugar Bowls.
I mean, Charlie Weiss's system is about a pro system as you're going to get, and I'm not so sure that he would have done as well in a pro system as he did with Kelly's system. And so I don't know. I don't know that he would have been as successful. I really don't, because you're counting on his arm to do all the legwork, no pun intended. And I just don't know. I don't think he would have been as successful. Now, I think Brady Quinn was arguably throwing to better receivers than Ian Book was, but were they better receivers because of who was throwing them the ball? I think that's a debate that will live on in infamy.
I think you can agree. I think that you can. Because of who was throwing them the ball, it gave those receivers more opportunities than some of the receivers.
Yeah.
Like, again, if Brady Quinn would have been the quarterback when Ian Book was the quarterback instead, I think that those receivers have better production.
Right, exactly. It's like the chicken and the egg. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of a similar situation to what we're looking at right now with CJ Carr and the receivers that are going to be his targets. You know, comparing what their production was with Riley Leonard compared to what their production will be potentially with CJ Carr. And everybody says, oh, the wide receivers are going to be so much better. Well, the quarterback who's throwing them the ball throws the ball better than the guy who was throwing the ball last year. And again, that doesn't take away.
Right.
Riley Leonard's a freaking winner. We discussed this, right? He wills his team to win and all of those different things. But CJ Carr is going to make the receivers better. He just is, you know, if he is who we think he is. And the same thing goes for Brady Quinn versus Ian Book.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't talked about Riley Leonard in this whole thing since he's the one that kind of falls in the middle. But, you know, again, Leonard was only here for 1 year, and look what he did. He you know, like when you talk about significant games, yes, Ian Book led Notre Dame to a pair of college football playoff appearances when it was just a 4-team field. Okay. But, you know, Riley Leonard's here for 1 year, and in back-to-back weeks, he leads them to the only 2 major bowl wins that the program has in the last 30 years. You know, so I mean, I think there's much more of a case for Leonard being in the starting spot than there is for Ian Book in this whole deal.
100%. Like this was easy in that I knew where the cut line was, but there is a debate to be had about who the starter was going to be. No doubt about it. I hesitated briefly as to who I was going to have as the starter. And I'll be honest with you, any other quarterback, I think there would be a conversation, obviously, with Jimmy Clausen because he had tools. It just wasn't able, you know, for a myriad of reasons, wasn't able to, you know, reach the ceiling. But I would take Riley Leonard over just about anybody else other than not named Brady Quinn or maybe Jimmy Clausen. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I agree. Quinn was responsible for 39 total touchdowns in 2006, which is the most in a single season in program history. Leonard and Book are tied for second behind him, you know, because, like, again, it's part of the deal. Like the 17 rushing touchdowns that Riley Leonard had, even though the you know, the passing yards and the passing, you know, the way things look from a passing standpoint, it's still tied for second most for any player in a single season in Notre Dame history. So if Leonard had been at Notre Dame for a couple more years, you know, I think that, like, we're obviously thinking of his career in a completely different light as well. And I think most people already, because of the way that it ended, kind of hold him in pretty high esteem. But I mean, it did take a while to get there. But it took a while for people to get past, you know, the fact that, like, the start to the season, the fact that it took him as long as it did to finally throw his first touchdown, and the fact that, like, the passing game just quite honestly didn't look pretty a lot of times. But the guy knows how to win at the end of the day.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
All right. So we agreed. Brady Quinn is the starter. Riley Leonard is benched, and Ian Book is cut. Second one, we're going to go to some coaches, coordinators. We're going to judge these guys strictly for their time as defensive coordinators at Notre Dame. You got Clark Lee, you got Al Golden, you got Mike Elko. 3 of the last 4 defensive coordinators, or I guess 3 of the last 5 now with Chris Hash.
True.
3 of the last 5 defensive.
Yeah, I guess he technically counts, but he hasn't really coached a game, obviously. But, you know, I feel like this one was easier for me the other way. So, like, I know who I'm starting. It's Al Golden. Now, there is a bit of recency bias there, and he arguably had the best roster of the 3 guys as well. So,
very true.
That's part of it, no doubt. But he was the coordinator when they went to the national championship game too. So I just think there's a lot to like about Al Golden. So I'm gonna start Al. So now it comes down to Elko and Lee. I'm gonna take Elko. Did I say Alco? I'm gonna take Elko over Lee. So I'll bench Elko. I will cut Clark Lee because. And I don't even know if this is a good reason, but I just think Mike Elko is kind of the mentor versus the mentee. And so I'll take the experience over the non-experience, I guess, in Elko. So I will start Al Golden, I will bench Mike Elko, and I will cut Clark Lee.
I'm the same. I'm in the same boat.
All right.
Golden had a fairly historically great defense. Now there was a little bit more of a learning curve maybe for him, with that, high profile incident in his very first game at Ohio State, blitzing both safeties and all that kind of stuff. Things worked out in the, and like things got a little rough at USC at the end of the season as well. But I mean, obviously look at the last 2 years and specifically last year. Craig says no Van Gorder. No. And the reason I have Elko in the second spot over Lee, even though he was only here for 1 year, Mike Elko, think of how historically bad the defense was under Brian Van Gorder. And the fact that I think most of us here covering this team thought there is no way that Mike Elko can significantly dig out of that hole with virtually the same personnel from 1 year to the next, from Van Gorder to Elko's one and only season at Notre Dame. So, and they did, and it really obviously kickstarted the run that a big part of the run that's come ever since then from 2017 on. So I put Elko second, and Clark Lee has to end up being the one that that gets cut, because all three of these guys were great defensive coordinators, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to get cut in this whole thing. And probably, like you said, Clark Lee came along with Elko from Wake Forest. He did a great job himself over the next couple of years, but he's got to be the one that ends up with the short straw. This one to me.
Anthony's worried because we keep agreeing. Don't worry. I'm sure that there's going to be a spot in
I know. Somewhere. I wonder if we are going to always agree on this.
This one will be interesting, Sean. This
could be the one that separates us.
Yeah.
The first one that really separates us. And by the way, Anthony, thanks for that super chat that you threw in. And going back to the quarterbacks, Josh says he would have taken Golson if he didn't get suspended for a year. And I consider, obviously he wasn't one of the options, but there was one version where I had Golson on here. And I just felt like, because of the fact that, kind of where he fit, he didn't really fit into the equation.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought. Okay, so the next one, 3 running backs. You got Kyron Williams, you got Josh Adams, you got Darius Walker. Bench, cut.
This one's tough for me. You're talking about 3 almost different generations, it feels like, of running backs at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Darius Walker was doing it when I was in college. And then obviously Josh Adams and Kyron Williams are more recent. So there's going to be maybe a little bit of recency bias. For whatever reason, and I don't even know if I have a good explanation for this. For whatever reason, I was never a Darius Walker fan. And then when he decided to leave early to go to the NFL, it just honked me off. Like, I wasn't happy about it. And you would think to yourself, well, logically, Vince, if you're not a Darius Walker fan and then he leaves early, you should be happy. But that was not the case. I didn't think he was ready to leave early, and it made me mad. But I don't know. I was never a huge Walker fan, and that totally clouds my judgment here. So I'm cutting Walker. I'm benching Josh Adams, because for Josh Adams, he was a little bit too much of a one-trick pony for me, as far as he's just straight speed, which speed kills. Don't get me wrong. Like, once he hits the hole, and it was
some would say
fun.
You have to have it to play.
You do
the position.
Once he would hit a hole and there was any kind of green grass, it was like watching Josh Adams run the length of the field was so entertaining. So entertaining. I just think Kyron Williams is the complete package. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can outrun you. Believe it or not, that's not really his calling card, but he can do it. He's done it. And obviously, I'm not taking into account his success in the NFL, but it's there. I just think he's more of a complete back than all 3 of these guys, or than the other 2. So I'm starting Kyron, I'm sitting Josh, and I'm cutting Darius.
Okay, interesting. I like the way this has worked out, because we will be disagreeing.
I figured we would.
This one. We will.
Does it have anything to do with one of these guys wore the star on their helmet?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Not at all. Not at all. So, you might be thinking of Julius Jones.
Oh, is it Julius that went to the cow? Okay, my bad.
Yeah. So, Stymie says Dexter Williams, or he asks Dexter Williams.
No.
I mean, we can't put every player in every category. There's got to be
Correct.
There can only be 3 in each. So I mean, obviously, I could have said, okay, Dexter Williams, Kyron Williams, like whatever. But
which Williams do you like the best?
We're not. Dexter was not part of this whole thing. Josh Adams, I think, kind of like you said, like maybe a little bit of a one-trick pony. Second most yards in a single season. Second most rushing yards. Also had a 229-yard game against Boston College, which is number 5 in the Notre Dame record books. And I mean, obviously made a push for a Heisman. I still feel like they marketed that thing incorrectly by trying to act like it was a team award and not an individual award. That just, not going to fly. He fizzled toward the end of the season, though. Yep, yeah. 33 trucking. That couldn't quite finish off the season. Kyron Williams, one of my favorite overall players in recent memory.
Sure.
27 touchdowns in his career, 10th in school, 27 rushing downs, 10th in school history. And Darius Walker is 4th in Notre Dame history in terms of overall rushing yards. And I think he does get a little bit lost in the shuffle because of where he came.
Yep. I agree.
Back, in the era that he played in. Like you said, maybe he should have stayed around a little bit longer. But that's not the question. The question is not, should he have stayed at Notre Dame longer? The question is, how great was he in his time at Notre Dame? So for this reason, the guy with the fourth most rushing yards in Notre Dame history is going to be my starter, Darius Walker.
Wow, you're going the complete opposite direction of me.
Good. The guy with one of the 2 most impressive touchdown runs I've ever seen in a Notre Dame uniform for a running back. Maybe top 3. Seen in person, top 2. Kyron Williams gets benched, and Josh Adams gets cut. So it goes Darius Walker, Kyron Williams, Josh Adams. That's my pecking order.
I can appreciate that. Like I said, I have an irrational dislike for Darius Walker. That's why I let off that way. There is no basis for my thinking, none. But yeah, I still think Kyron Williams is the most complete of the 3. But I like the fact that we disagree.
I mean, it's proven out so far in the short time he's been in the NFL. I mean, I think he's outperformed obviously where he was drafted so far.
Yeah, I think he outperformed what we all thought he was going to be in the NFL. I mean, let's be honest. I was a fan of his, obviously, at Notre Dame. I thought he was a very good back. Again, I think he's the most complete Notre Dame back, right? It has nothing to do with the NFL piece. And he is just he's a top player in the NFL now. And I did not see that coming. And if anybody says that they did and your last name isn't Williams, you're lying, because nobody saw this coming. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Craig says Kyron played with a bad line too. I mean, that's true. And the run that I was referring to is that run against North Carolina. That I think where he starts to his right, he's deep, in his own backfield. Obviously, he cuts back to his left and goes even deeper in the backfield to get out there to the sideline, and just to be able to do that, to turn it into a gain of a couple yards rather than a 6-yard loss, that was impressive enough. And then he turns it into the touchdown that he did. That's still one of the greatest individual efforts. I would say that in the 2-yard touchdown run by Jeremiah Love against Penn State, 2 of the best individual efforts by a running back that I've seen.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Yep.
All right, who's next?
All right, now we're going to some wide receivers.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this has the potential to divide us as well. You got Will Fuller, you got Jeff Samardzija, you got Golden Tate. And I know that Michael Floyd is not on this list, because we're not saying who's the greatest. I try to find guys that would make compelling arguments for start, bench, cut. And I felt like if I put Michael Floyd in this, I just felt like he would have hands down been
the starter.
And I think that there are cases for number 1 for any of these 3 guys: Fuller, Samardzija, Golden Tate.
There are absolutely cases to make for all 3 of these guys being your starter. And I could make a very compelling case for all 3. This one's really tough. Again,
I think so too.
You can't take into account the pro career. First of all, one of them didn't even play football. One of them was injury plagued, and one had a pretty long career, right? So I'm trying to like erase that part in my mind, because if you're going to do that, then Golden Tate is your starter, right? Jeff Samardzija made big plays. He was the big name when he was there, but he played on the same team as Golden Tate, which is an interesting conundrum, if you will. And then there's Will Fuller, who, I mean, his middle name might as well be Big Game, because anytime there was a big moment or a big game, he came through.
Mm-hmm.
But then there were opportunities where if the lights weren't quite that bright, he had drops. And again, he's not remembered for those. He's remembered for Virginia, and he's remembered for torching the kid from USC, the corner, and I can't remember his name, but I just remember thinking to myself, that's why you don't talk trash. But I think I'm going to start Golden Tate.
Okay.
I think he had the best combination of speed, hands, and route running of the three. So I'm going to start Golden Tate. I'm going to bench Jeff Samardzija. He's my backup because it's Jeff Samardzija, man. Like I can't take my feelings completely out of it. Like, he showed up in big games. Obviously he had good hands. And he was doing two sports at a time. Like, I don't know. Jeff Samardzija is my second guy. And unfortunately that means I have to cut Will Fuller. So that's my three.
So when you look at the three of these guys, Samardzija, 4th in career receptions, 4th and 5th for single season receptions for his 2005-2006 season, 3rd in career receiving yards, 3rd in single season yards, 3rd career touchdowns. Tate, 2nd career yards, number 1 and number 10 in single season yards. He's the only Notre Dame receiver to have 2 200-plus yard receiving games against Washington and Stanford, and he's also 4th career touchdown catches. Will Fuller, 2nd single season yards, 4th for his career yards, 2nd career touchdowns. It's like the three of these guys. And again, that's not even including, Michael Floyd in this whole thing. I felt like these three guys were the most even that I could
Like
find.
I said, you can make a case for any of the three of them to start.
Right. Anthony's saying no Rocket is criminal.
Patience, Anthony.
Rocket will show up in another
Patience.
question here, not this one. But like I said, look at the responses to this. It's all over the place. Stymie, start Samardzija, bench Tate, cut Fuller. TD4ND, start Golden, bench Fuller, cut Samardzija. DJ, start Tate, bench Fuller, cut the hair, Samardzija. And then Anthony goes Tate, Fuller, Samardzija. So, I mean, like, pretty good. Like I said, I felt like this one, you could make a case for any of the three. And so you went Tate, Samardzija, Fuller.
I did. And I don't think anybody completely agreed with me, which is interesting.
I'm going Samardzija, Tate, Fuller. I'm starting Samardzija.
Okay.
I'm benching Tate, and I'm cutting Fuller. I think that I think that Samardzija, I think that he was a little bit more versatile, and I like his size a little bit better. I've always felt like he had really good body control, for a guy as big as he was, and obviously he had speed as well. Tate had speed. He was pretty much like a straight line go route guy there for a little bit, but they're both great in their own way. And Tate obviously had a great career. Samardzija had a nice career pitching in the big leagues as well, and obviously he played both sports here at Notre Dame as well. But I've got to go Samardzija as my starter, Tate the bench, Fuller the cut.
I don't have an argument with whatever direction you want to go. So yeah, cool. I have no problem with that. I look and somebody goes start all three. Yeah, that would be an ideal starting lineup, no doubt about it.
Well, what's the fun? Like if we did that, the show would be over in 30 seconds. We just run through the list and go, okay, start all three.
Start them all. Let's go. I don't care who your quarterback is. You got some weapons to throw to. That would be great.
This next one has a chance to, I think, really rile some people up. Offensive coordinators: Tommy Rees, Chip Long, Jared Parker. Start bench cut.
Honestly, this one's kind of a process of elimination, I think.
I think it might actually be easier.
Yeah, I think. So I'm going to be fairly quick on this one. I'm starting Chip Long, I'm benching Tommy Rees, and I'm cutting Jared Parker.
Ooh, interesting.
Yep.
I'm starting Long, I'm benching Parker, I'm cutting Rees.
Okay.
For as much grief as Jared Parker gets,
yeah, right.
That offense still scored a lot of points.
Agreed. I think I would like to see more. Man, I would just like to see Tommy Rees if Brian Kelly didn't exist. Like, you know what I mean? Even as a coach, because obviously as a player, you know, he's influenced by what Brian Kelly did and who he was and all of those different things. I think honestly, I think Tommy Rees is a very, 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 very bright football mind. I just feel like he just had this shadow over him just for his entire career, both playing and coaching. And he hasn't really had an opportunity to.
I mean, TD 4D brings up Alabama, but I mean, let's not forget. I mean, they went to the playoff with Tommy Rees as coordinator.
Correct.
Like,
right, 100%. Like,
was it a great year? No, but they didn't have much at quarterback, and they made it to the playoff.
Correct.
That year.
I think Tommy Rees gets a bad rap as an offensive coordinator and as a recruiter, for that matter. And the recruiting thing is so much easier of an argument to make in favor of Tommy Rees, because as soon as Brian Kelly left, recruiting at the quarterback position went skyrocket.
I'm gonna change my mind. I'm gonna call an audible here. I've talked because I actually talked myself into it when I started talking about the fact that he did make it to the playoff, and then as somebody pointed out, he won a lot of games with Drew Pine. So
that's true.
I think there's something to be said for that. So I'm actually going to go Rees, Long.
Oh, you're taking them all the way to the top.
I'm flipping it. Yep.
You're taking them all the way to the top, to the penthouse.
Totally flipping it.
From the outhouse to the penthouse. Man. Hey, look, I just basically was giving you the same argument, so I can't disagree with you. I just think Tommy Rees gets a bad rap.
Yeah. I think that, I know that there was a lot of frustration. Again, not every guy if I put Denbrock in here, everyone would say Denbrock. Like there's no discussion at that point. But with these three, I feel like these three,
yes, I agree.
We're not just determining who's the best in Notre Dame history.
This isn't a Mount Rushmore conversation.
We're picking three fairly as much as we can, three fairly comparable guys, and trying to decide which do you start, which do you bench, which do you cut.
The rules of the game are tough.
Right. If I went, let's say I went Lou Holtz, Marcus Freeman, Ara Parseghian. Okay, you've got two coaches with national championships, and you got a young guy who just went to a national championship.
Right.
I mean, most people are probably going to take Lou, and then you're going to take Ara because he also won a national championship, and then you're going to put Freeman at the end. So
true.
What fun is that?
It's true.
Right? Yeah. What?
No, I just think it's just funny. That's all. That's all I got.
All right, now we're going to do some tight ends.
This one was the hardest one, or one of the hardest ones of the day.
And I brought no stats for this. Michael Mayer, Kyle Rudolph, Anthony Fasano. Now, granted, don't throw out a million other tight ends, because I know that there are other good tight ends.
Correct. It's tight end you, for God's sakes. We know there's other good tight ends.
Yes.
We get it. And I might go a different. See, I'm going with my gut. This is what's going to happen. And part of this is also my likes and dislikes, I think. The hardest part is, I think I remember when a certain guy played, And then I look up when they actually played, and I was like, oh, really?
Like, I was 8 years off.
Yeah. So like that's the biggest thing. Okay. So this one makes more sense. Okay. Because I had to look up how old Anthony Fasano was to figure out the years that he was playing at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
So Anthony Fasano was playing at Notre Dame round about the time that I was in college. Roundabout. Okay. So like just after. So I do have a warm place in my heart for Anthony Fasano because I really liked watching him play. And I think he's going to he was like one of the first modern day tight ends in this line of tight end U, in my personal opinion. Okay. He was one of the first guys. He's one of the first guys to kind of get into the NFL and, make a name. And I'm not talking about like Ross Brown or I don't know who, like the people from way back. I'm talking about quote unquote modern day, right? And I think he fits that mold. I think he was kind of one of the first guys to kind of start that trend up again. And so he does hold a place in my heart. And so that's why I'm putting him second. I think Kyle Rudolph is the most complete tight end of the three. And that means I have to cut Michael Mayer. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people. And I get it. But that's my order. I'm going Kyle Rudolph, Anthony Fasano, Michael Mayer.
Okay. And I mean, I think that there's definitely an argument there. And like, if you look at the three of them, obviously Mayer is still young in his NFL career. It hasn't really amounted to anything in the short amount of time that he's been in the NFL, in the 2 years that he's been in the NFL so far. Rudolph had the best NFL career of any of those guys. Now, I realize you can go back to guys like Mark Bavaro and Irv Cross and, like some of those guys when you talk about Notre Dame and tight end U and all that kind of stuff. But to me, I feel like Fasano is kind of the OG of this, of this century.
Of the new guys, century. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So I wasn't off when I was saying that. Okay. That makes me feel better that you're saying it too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like he's the one who has started this run.
Yes.
More than 2 decades old now of great tight ends coming through Notre Dame and, getting to the NFL. And like, when you look at like his numbers and Rudolph's numbers, they're pretty comparable. Michael Mayer's numbers dwarf them. So, again, this is tough, but like the question is supposed to be tough. Like I've said a few different times, it's not just a matter of, finding who's the greatest ever. I tried to do this, so that because you're not going to remember like what Mark Bavaro did. I remember Mark Bavaro from his New York Giants time in the 1980s. I don't remember him from his Notre Dame times, so like apples, oranges, right? So I'm starting Michael Mayer because I do feel like of the modern Notre Dame tight ends, he is the greatest for his time at Notre Dame. I'm benching Anthony Fasano because, again, I feel like, like OG and, like who started the run, it is him. Kyle Rudolph is going to get benched in this whole thing, but I mean, he can sit on a pretty fat bank account from his time in the NFL and feel pretty good about the fact that he got benched in this. And, because again, we're looking at to me, it was very close between Rudolph and Fasano for who's getting benched and who's getting cut. But so I went Mayer as the starter, Fasano gets benched, Rudolph gets cut. But again, I feel like you definitely can, I think, make cases for any of these three guys.
Agreed. This next one's so hard.
I know. This is even tougher because you don't have any stats to quantify anything because we're talking about offensive linemen. We're going 3 left tackles. Ronnie Stanley, Zach Martin, Joe Alt. Who you starting, who you benching, who you cutting? So
we're talking Notre Dame career, correct? I want to clarify.
Yes. Right? And by the way, I didn't include Eifert in that last one because, to me, I felt like it would have been like if I included Eifert and Mayer, I feel like that there's definitely maybe you're really debating those, but whoever the third guy wasn't. I didn't think was gonna. Maybe if I would have said, not had Fasano and subbed him for Eifert, but again, we're not going who's the greatest ever. No. But Eifert was definitely great in his time in a Notre Dame uniform.
So we're only going Notre Dame. And so you're going to not like what I'm about to say because
It's
we're
okay.
only talking about Notre Dame.
It's okay.
Look,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point because I know what you're going to say now.
Because if we were taking into account NFL, Zach Martin's the number one guy.
He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer, 100%.
Just like Kyle Rudolph.
Correct.
Not going to be a Hall of Famer, but of those three we just talked about, the best of, overall.
This would have been a hands down no-brainer. Zach Martin's a starter. We're just talking Notre Dame. And because of the fact that I think Zach Martin was a good to very good tackle at Notre Dame. And then obviously he moved inside to guard and became a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, I'm cutting Zach Martin. I think Joe Alt is the better tackle between him and Ronnie Stanley. So I'm going to start Joe Alt. I'm going to bench Ronnie and I'm going to cut Zach. That's the order.
Okay. Wow. Mike says Alt, the best offensive lineman at Notre Dame he's ever seen.
Quentin Nelson would like to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I honestly, I originally had Quentin Nelson in here, like just as offensive lineman. And then I felt like, well, I should probably just do left tackle since they've obviously had so many tackles.
Quentin Nelson would be a hard no start, let me tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Joe Alt is my starter. I like the only knock against him is maybe he didn't do it a little bit longer, but
because he left after 3 years, and that wasn't the norm. Yeah, when those other guys were playing, like they played 5 years. You know what I mean? Because and start as freshmen mostly. Well, Ronnie Stanley started as a freshman, didn't he? I want to say he did.
I think he did actually.
But when he was doing it, like that was really unheard of when he did it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm going Joe Alt as my starter. Zach Martin is going to be on my bench, and Ronnie Stanley is going to be at the end. That's who I've got to cut.
Okay. That's fair. These guys are all so good, though, man.
I know.
Those three are so good. And Ronnie Stanley, I feel like, even though he's the guy that Ronnie Stanley just did it without much fanfare, it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, he has been one of the most reliable tackles in the NFL for his entire career. You know what I mean? And he's one of the best tackles in the NFL. And I feel like he was one of the best tackles in the country when he was at Notre Dame. But I think of the three guys, he got the least amount of fanfare of anybody.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And maybe that's just because it was kind of in those in-between years, sort of like, because I'm trying to think of when exactly he played. That would have been like, I want to say that was like the 14-15 range. Let me see if I can find him here real quick. He's only 31 years old, for one thing.
Which means he's been in the league.
He was drafted in the first round in 2016. Yeah. So he played like 13, 14, 15. At Notre Dame, anyway.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
You can't go wrong with any of the three. I'll just say that. You can't go wrong with any of the three at all.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Dancing Bears.
All right. Curious to see where we go here. I have a feeling.
Man.
I have a feeling we're both gonna have the same starter, and maybe it's just gonna be too easy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Former head coaches: Bob Davie, Tyrone Willingham, Charlie Weiss. Start bench cut.
This is tough, man, because okay, so we just did three like Hall of Fame type guys, and now it's the complete opposite. Before you answer, okay,
I'm going to tell you something.
Okay,
because I think that because of his first two seasons, Charlie Weiss probably needs to be the starter.
Agreed.
Of this group.
That I completely agree.
But Bob Davie, career record at Notre Dame, 35-25, 2 9-win seasons, 2 5-win seasons. Charlie Weiss, 35-27, 2 more losses, same amount of wins. Davie 0-3 in bowl games. Charlie Weiss 1-3, the only bowl win against Hawaii.
Yeah.
And he also went 16-21 in his last 3 seasons at Notre Dame. Does that make it maybe a little bit harder than what you would have said, or is
Nope.
is Weiss still too easy?
No, Weiss is too easy.
Okay,
still.
so we don't need to stay on this because it's going to just be Weiss, Davey, Willingham, right? Or is it close between the other two?
It's close between the other two, to be perfectly honest with you. I could go either way. And here, you're going to maybe, I don't know. This is okay. So Charlie Weiss is my number one. I think his two best seasons were better than anything that Davey and Willingham put together. Yes, It was a train wreck towards the end.
That's why everybody got so excited about it.
No doubt about it. It was a train wreck at the end. He was not setting Notre Dame up for success the way he was practicing and doing all of those things. But he's still, of this group, he's still the starter. I would put Willingham second. And you want to know what the tiebreaker is for me?
Sure.
Sean?
Let me hear it.
I think Ty was a better human being than Bob Davey. That's all I got.
Because the biggest knock against, that's for sure. And maybe not the big, one of the biggest knocks is Bob Davey walked around complaining about all the traditions at Notre Dame.
Yes.
Didn't like the pep rallies and, all this, didn't want to, was not buying into any of that stuff. Tyrone Willingham, at least he's a good guy. And, I've said before, there was Isaiah Stanback, who's on Good Morning Football on NFL Network a couple months back. I think Brian and I did a show, and Stanback said the guy that he would run through the wall for, of all the, people in his football life, Tyrone Willingham, because of the person that Tyrone Willingham, was in the way that he treated you.
He was a really nice guy. I will still never forget, and I've told this story before, when you and I first met each other. I had a night job basically, and so I was free during the day, and you had me cover the weekly press conference that Tyrone Willingham would have, and it was at the WNDU studios.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go, and I would basically just sit in the back and record it, because back in the day it wasn't streamed and it wasn't this and it wasn't that, so you needed audio for the radio show. So I would record it and I would give you the audio, whatever. And one day he and I both arrived about the same time, and he held the door for me and says, "After you, Vince." And I was like, how does this guy know who I am? Because I'm literally a nobody.
No kidding. Because I sat down with him for 2 years, maybe 3 years, all 3 years that he was here, because I would do his coach's show at that time, back at Logan's Roadhouse. Yep. I don't know if you remember that, but
I do.
So I would host his coach's show. But it was the only coach's show in America where the coach never actually shows up to the coach's show. We would have, we would be live, and a player would come in every week. It was me and Larry Williams, former Notre Dame offensive lineman. After the press conference every week, I would record, a quick interview, 5 to 8 minutes with Tyrone Willingham. I would record it with him, and then that's what we would play for his coach's show. But I don't remember him ever actually saying my name at any point.
There you go. Maybe that's why it stuck out to me. You know what I mean? Because I was still a kid and a little starstruck that I got to at least be in the presence of the head football coach at Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And the fact that one random day he knew my name, and it stuck with me for a long time. I don't know. And look, and here's the thing about Tyrone. He still tried to do everything the right way. I just think because of the way,
except for maybe the recruiting part.
I was going to get there.
Okay.
He did everything right off the field, as far as, keeping his players accountable, academics was a high standard, all of those different things. I just think coming from Stanford to Notre Dame, the manner in which it happened with the O'Leary thing, and he wasn't ready for the big show. And I don't know that he's a big show kind of coach. I just don't. Right. He was successful at Stanford, and Stanford, I'm sorry if there's any Cardinal fans out there, they're a tier below. And he wasn't that great at Stanford. Right.
He was okay, but
he was okay.
Never should have.
That's exactly right. The head coach. So then he gets to Notre Dame, he's way over his head, and then he ends up at Washington. They were okay, right? And then he was it. That was it. He was done. And so I just think he was way over his head, and I just don't think that this was a good fit. He tried. Not hard enough on the recruiting trail, obviously, but, he did recruit some decent players that Weiss had a lot of success with. So there is that.
Tommy says being a good guy doesn't win you games. That's
Agreed.
absolutely right. There's a million guys, million coaches you can say, great guy.
Absolutely.
Not a good coach.
But the people we were choosing from.
And just the opposite as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Crappy guy, great coach.
Yes, 100%. We know there's people like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say that that doesn't win you a whole lot of arguments as far as being a good football coach. In this particular case, when it was him versus Davey, it did win that argument for me. So there you go.
All right, we've got 2 more to go. I'm going to go defensive ends first.
Okay.
Start bench cut. Stephon Tuitt, Justin Tuck, Isaiah Foskey. 3 greats.
It's hard to argue. Foskey broke Tuck's record, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go Isaiah Foskey start. I'm gonna go Justin Tuck second, and I'm gonna go cut Stephon Tuitt. And it's based on production and the record and all of those different things because all 3 of these guys are amazing.
Yep.
So that's the order I'm going in.
Yep. Foskey, 26.5 sacks in his career, number 1 in Notre Dame history. Had 11 in both 21 and 22, which is the 3rd most in a single season. Tuck has the single season sack record with 13.5. Tyrone Willingham guy, obviously, but his 24.5 sacks, number 2 behind Foskey, and then Stephon Tuitt is 4th in Notre Dame history for a career, 21.5, and 2nd in terms of single season. So like these 3 guys right here in terms of defensive end are the standard bearers to me. Now again, if you add on what Tuck did with the New York Giants, then it's a no-brainer. But for what they did at Notre Dame, I agree with you. I'm going Foskey, start, Tuck, bench, Tuitt, cut. Yeah.
I will also say there is a bit of I wish Justin Tuck would have stayed another year because I believe he did leave a year on the table, and then he went to the Giants and was amazing. And it's like, dang it, one more year would have been great.
Yeah, and maybe he wouldn't have been with the Giants if he had stayed for one.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Okay. So now with this next one, in this last one, I went a little bit different route.
Yeah, you did.
For this. This is where Rocket Ismail comes in. Start, bench, cut. Rocket Ismail, Desmond Howard, Devin Hester.
Look, every single person on the planet. No, I'm just kidding. Every person, all the people that are watching this, all the people that are listening to this, I feel like are going to have the same exact order. Rocket, Hester, Howard. And it's a distant chasm between 2 and 3.
There you go. There it is. I mean, can there be any doubt? And again, Hester, I mean, obviously he turned into the greatest return man in NFL history.
This is true.
Really good in college as well. But in terms of just straight up who they were, I mean, just look at look at that Orange Bowl, where the flag was thrown with Rocket Ismail. And we can all obviously make the argument, and will make the argument that the flag never should have been thrown. But just think about, that's the only way you're probably going to win that game is if Rocket Ismail takes the punt back and scores a touchdown. So what does he do? He takes the punt back and scores a touchdown. Fortunately, there was a flag and you lost. Howard, got his Heisman Trophy, obviously a Super Bowl MVP as well, but also for more for his exploits as a return man as opposed to being a wide receiver. And, again, Devin Hester, the greatest return man in NFL history. But for college, we're starting Rocket. We're benching Hester. We're cutting Desmond Howard.
Yeah. He had wore the wrong helmet, man. I'm sorry. Yep. And Hester went to Miami, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a heated rivalry too with Notre Dame, but there's no way I'm putting a Michigan Wolverine anywhere in the conversation. So, and look, his nickname was Rocket.
That's right.
Come on.
You can't argue with that.
Rocket is yes, it's Rocket all day.
There's no argument. All right, so that's start, bench, cut. I might have to come up with some new ones. I feel like people kind of enjoyed that, but also kind of yelled, because we didn't have their guys in there. So I'll see if I can slip in some of those others, like finding comps, that we can both talk about, because like I said, that's part of it too. It's like, okay, do you really want to remember from like 30 years ago?
No.
No,
I don't.
Right.
Those were good. They all sparked debate, which is good.
I thought so. Most of them anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. So Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go, baby. Rapid fire on a Tuesday.
Got a little audio today, and I think this audio quality is going to be a little bit better than yesterday's audio. That we used. That's okay. It's not your fault.
It's still
microphones involved now.
Yeah.
So Marcus Freeman was on Greg McElroy's Always College Football podcast last week, and he talked a little bit about his quarterbacks, CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey.
Two guys that were really battling with CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey, and both did some really good things, right? Both, as you evaluate the quarterback position, have an extremely high ceiling. They both do things really, really well, and they do them differently. Our job is to say who's going to give us the best chance to win as we get ready to face an opponent. And those questions will be answered by the quarterbacks during fall camp. I love it because I love competition, right? Now you can add a little bit of pressure through competition to see who can perform under those high-pressure situations. So I think they're both capable of being the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, or they wouldn't be in this quarterback battle. You're going to look for any way to help your team. And if that means you use two quarterbacks for certain situations, then you're going to find a way to use two quarterbacks. That might be two quarterbacks on the field at the same time. Who knows? I'm looking forward to an extremely challenging and high-pressure fall camp.
Two quarterbacks on the field at the same time, Vince. Let's just start with that. Do you think that CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey ever actually line up on the field at the same time together?
I do not. I do not see that happening. This isn't South Bend, Washington High School. I do not see them both in the backfield or on the field at all at the same time. This isn't a gimmicky type situation where if CJ Carr wins the battle, then Kenny Minchey moves and plays wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like I don't see that being the case, or vice versa. So they're both quarterbacks, and I don't see them on the field at the same time.
I generally don't think it's going to happen, but like, look at all the Toonces says, look at all his trick plays with Buckner. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like when you start to think about, all the trick stuff that they did with special teams, like, could you see him maybe
quarterbacks aren't on special teams.
No, I know, but like, could you see him send both Minchey and Carr into the huddle at the same time? And then, like at the last second, one of them lines up in the slot,
I just don't think they're a weapon there. You know what I mean? I don't know.
They might not be a weapon, but you're putting them on the field because you're like showing the defensive coordinator, well, which one's actually going to, get behind center. I don't think that they would actually use both of them. I mean, odds are it's not going to happen. I think it was interesting just that he said that.
No, I did. There was some chuckles in the background. I don't know if that was us or if that was on the recording, but I'm gonna play it safe and say it does not happen. I just feel like if they're getting gimmicky like that, then they got more problems than they do solutions.
Good point. So what about the greater picture? Because he was obviously alluding to the fact that we could see a package for a quarterback out there. Do you think that both Carr and Minchey are going to play this season, or is Marcus Freeman throwing up some smoke here?
I think that there is some possibility for that to be the case. I could see, them utilizing Kenny's legs in short yardage or Kenny's legs in the red zone or something along those lines if CJ Carr ends up being the full-time starter. I could see that, and I think CJ Carr has enough positive ego to allow that to happen and not be upset about it. You know what I mean? Because he can see that there are traits that Kenny has that are better than CJ's, right? And vice versa. If Kenny ends up winning the starting job, I do not see that as the case, because I don't think that there is a logical way to get CJ on the field in a package situation that actually amplifies the offense.
Right.
So if CJ's the starter, then yes. If Kenny's the starter, then no, if that makes sense.
I would agree with that, because I think that Marcus Freeman, when you were there, correct me if I'm wrong, when he was talking about like some of the offense and going for it in different situations in that media session you guys had last week, like part of the reason they were able to be successful going forward on fourth down is because you had a quarterback with the running ability of Riley Leonard. Now, that didn't always necessarily mean, Riley Leonard's just, out
Right.
running wild, but he could use his physicality as well to get behind a wall of offensive linemen and pick up a first down that way. Like I could see Kenny Minchie easy sort of, slipping into that as a fourth down option and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think there's a much greater chance that it happens if Minchie is the number 2 that we could see both of them. And I think we probably will in that instance, like to some degree.
I do too. Again, it enhances your offense, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now we're going to play our new favorite game.
Oh, that's right.
We're going to guess the season over-under win total for the Florida State Seminoles. And I've actually got to bring up the schedule here. I forgot to bring it up before we started this thing. So we're going to look at Florida State's schedule for the upcoming 2025 season. We are going to guess their over-under win total.
All right. I'm ready. Let's see.
Okay. They start off against Alabama.
Yeah, that's not a win.
I don't think so either.
It's a home game.
It is a home game. It is a home game.
Yeah.
East Texas A&M. Feel pretty strongly about that one.
I do too. Also a home game.
Yeah. It's on ACC Network, I see. Kent State. Call that a dub?
I would think so.
Okay, now we get into ACC play. They're at Virginia. They host Miami. They host Pittsburgh. They go to Stanford. They host Wake Forest. They go to Clemson. They play Virginia Tech. They're at NC State, and they are at Florida. So they open the season with an SEC school, Alabama. They close the season with an SEC school, Florida. And, of course, they've got Miami and Clemson in there as well. This, of course, is a team that won 2 games all of last year. So what's the over-under win total that Vegas has got listed? We don't look at any of these.
Right. So I am sitting between 6.5 and 7.5. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
They only won 2 games last year. That is going to come into play here. The fact they open up with Alabama is going to come into play here. I'm going to say it's 6.5, but I would not be overly surprised if it was 7.5. So I'm going to say 6.5.
You're going 6.5?
I'm going 6.5.
I'm going 5.5.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Going a little bit lower.
Okay. Let's see what the old Vegas odd makers have to say.
Tommy says post-schedule read, I'd say 5.5, but he thinks it'll be 6.5. Robin thinks 6.5.
I think at 5.5, it's just the over gets absolutely pounded.
It's probably true.
Doesn't mean I don't think it's true, but I think they want people to think twice
to
about
actually
it
bet some money.
Yeah.
That's fair.
6.5. Come on, baby.
6.5 does feel like a pretty good number. I'll stick with my gut instinct and go with 5.5. All right, here we go. We're locked in. You're 6.5. I'm 5.5. Right?
Yep.
Florida State's over/under win total is 7.5.
Wow. Well, see,
they're getting confidence by their name alone.
They really are. I think I'm taking the under on that one, folks.
Yep.
I'm taking the under.
For sure.
I don't think they're ready to be an 8-win football team.
To me, they've got 4 definite losses on that schedule.
And that's 8, right?
Alabama, Miami, Florida, Clemson. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And so you're at 8 right there. You've got to win the rest.
You got to win them.
So you're telling me they're not going to slip up and win or lose one of those other games? NC State, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking the under on that one, folks.
For sure.
Taking the under.
Very interesting.
It really is.
7.5. Man. It
really is. That's a high number, man.
I think so too.
You look at that schedule and you think 7.5.
Not after they won 2 games last year.
Yeah, that's a big swing, man. You want to talk about most improved for the entire sport of college football? That would be it right there.
Yeah, I mean, even winning 7 games is going
Right.
to be a major improvement. So I just don't see it. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Bill Belichick, as of June 1st, has a buyout that allows him to leave North Carolina by paying the school $1 million.
So is this a new clause?
So his previous buyout before June 1st was $10 million. It dropped to $1 million on June 1st.
Oh, interesting.
And this is for him to pay North Carolina to leave, not the other way around.
Interesting that they would choose June 1st of all years or of all dates. Like that's in very they go and to make it at 10% of what it was is also kind of crazy. It's very interesting. That's the only fill in the blank I can think. It's very interesting because I don't know why a coach would leave after June 1st, which maybe that's why it dropped down so far. But, you know, maybe he's also realizing maybe this isn't the gig for him and he could easily plunk down $1 million to get out of it. But he'd obviously be putting North Carolina in a heck of a spot if he ended up doing that. So I don't know. It's just a strange clause to have in a contract. It's very strange.
It feels very odd to me that it is June 1st because like the assumption is, okay, it's a $10 million buyout basically from January through May, and then it drops down to $1 million. And like it's easy to assume that, well, you have it in place because like you feel like there are going to be some NFL options or whatever, but NFL teams aren't hiring head coaches in June.
No,
like all their coaches are in line. They're going through OTAs, getting ready for training camp and all that kind of stuff. So just seems odd, but I guess at the same time, you know, I don't know if there's like an escalator, like it goes back up at some point during the season or immediately after last season to make it more difficult if he would want to leave to go to the NFL. But that's like the only thing that I can think of is it's there to give him like an NFL out. But obviously that's not going to happen, just the way things have happened and just the timing of it as well. So it's very curious, very unique, but it's also Bill Belichick. So I guess we shouldn't be too surprised. We're going to go back to some more start bench cut. And I've got these aren't Notre Dame related, but I've got some college football. I've got some baseball. I've even got a movie one in here for us. So the first one, college football and NFL head coaches, 3 guys who have done both. Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson, Jim Harbaugh, start bench cut.
There's a lot of hatred in here for me.
Why they're here, Vince.
Kind of across the board. Kind of across the board, which makes this very difficult. I tried to look at this from a couple of different directions. Okay, who would I rather play for? Who would I rather have my son play for? And who would I rather have coach my team? Like those are the various things that like I went through my head.
Okay, as
I was thinking about these 3, and for the love of God, I have different answers every single time. Like I don't. This is really hard. This is really hard. All 3 of these guys are guys that if they coach your team, you love them.
Mm-hmm.
You love them. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? They're players, coaches. They like to have fun. You know, all of those things, which makes them hated by everybody else. And that's part of the problem. So here's how I'm going to do it. Okay. All right. I actually had a lot of, I don't know, respect isn't the right word, but I kind of revered the way Jim Harbaugh did things when he was at Stanford. But then he went to Michigan and it just all went downhill. And I'm pretty sure he's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So he's going to be my cut.
Okay. I had a feeling he would.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just the Michigan thing. It's just, he just went a little too far out to left field for me. You know, just a little crazy, a little cuckoo, and just a little much. So he's my cut. Pete Carroll and Jimmy Johnson. This one's tough because Pete Carroll, he always just looked like he was just having so much fun, whether he was at USC or whether he was with the Seahawks or whatever, just having so much fun on the sidelines, and it seemed like everybody loved him. Jimmy Johnson was an acquired taste, but that man was a genius when it came to draft capital and what he was able to do to build up the Cowboys from where they were, right? I hated him when he was at Miami. I did not like him when he was at the Cowboys, but you have to give him the respect that he is due based on what he did with the Cowboys. So I'm going to start Pete and bench Jimmy.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to do. I don't know. I had no idea.
I wasn't sure which way you were going to go there.
Me neither.
Quite honestly.
Me neither.
It sounded like you were talking yourself into Jimmy, and then you kind of pulled the end around.
I know. I think what it comes down to is I would have loved to play for Pete Carroll, and I would love for my son to play for Pete Carroll. So that's where I went. Pete Carroll.
Because the crazy thing is, like, all three of these guys feels like, like we were talking about Marcus Freeman's culture and all that stuff yesterday. All three of these guys, from what you hear anyway, I mean, there was a lot of team culture in different ways. Like with Pete Carroll, it was more about him and, just that very positive attitude that he had and the whole thing. With Jimmy Johnson, there was and with Carroll too, but with Jimmy Johnson, there was just a ton of talent there. But like the way we viewed that talent was a lot different. That's why we had Catholics versus convicts t-shirts, because like the way Miami Hurricanes presented themselves, and even the Dallas Cowboys, because of the fact that Michael Irvin played for him both in Miami and in Dallas, that culture looked a lot different. But he sure did a lot of winning at both places, and so it's hard to dispute that. And then the fact that not only did he win 2 Super Bowls as well as a national championship, and that's one of the things. Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson, both won Super Bowls and national championships in college. Jim Harbaugh won his national championship, got to a Super Bowl, hasn't quite won a Super Bowl yet. But that's why these three guys, not to mention the fact the rivalry with Notre Dame, I definitely wanted to try to hit you with that. But I got to go with Jimmy.
I figured.
For obvious reasons, I think. Pete Carroll. So Jimmy is my starter. Now, I should also say, like, of these three guys, when they were at their college schools, like, I hated Jimmy Johnson the most.
Oh, yeah, because he was Miami.
That's right.
Yeah. You're probably pissed when they hired him at the Cowboys.
I was.
Yeah.
I was absolutely pissed. I've told this story before. I was home on leave from the Army getting ready to go to Germany when they announced that Jerry Jones had bought the team, and my dad, remember, who's a Washington fan, came in my room and woke me up to tell me the news that Jerry Jones had bought the team. They fired Tom Landry and they hired Jimmy Johnson. And I was beside myself. I couldn't believe.
Just pissed off for so many reasons.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And then he laughed as he walked out of the room after he told me about it. But Jimmy Johnson is my starter, 2 Super Bowl wins, and basically responsible for building the team that won the third. I mean, there's a very good chance if he had stayed in Dallas, they were going to win 4 straight Super Bowls. Agreed. But would have been obviously the only team to ever do that. So Jimmy Johnson is my starter. Pete Carroll is my bench. Jim Harbaugh is my cut.
At least we both cut Jim Harbaugh. That makes me feel better.
We can feel good about that.
Yep.
How about this next one? Dabo Sweeney, Kirby Smart, Ryan Day.
Well, the cut is easy. It's Ryan Day. No problem. He's out.
Ding, ding.
Him and his beard. See you later. This is going to be controversial, I think, but I think I'm going to start Dabo and I'm going to bench Kirby. Kirby, I think, is probably a better like X's and O's type football coach, but and I know he rubs people the wrong way, but like with the all shucks stuff and everything else, but for some reason, I just like Dabo Sweeney. I always have. I remember the day that he got hired as the head coach at Clemson for some reason, and I don't know why. I've always liked Dabo Sweeney, and he's my starter.
I think Dabo is probably the most likable of the three. That's for sure.
That's fair.
I mean, Ryan Day and Kirby Smart, I think, are the 2 best recruiters of this, and they've obviously all won national championships, and Smart and Sweeney have won multiples. Day, to me, is the least likable. And your opinions may vary on that, maybe between him and Smart. But I think Smart is the best recruiter of this group, and you've got the multiple national championships. So I'm going to start Smart, bench Dabo, cut Ryan Day.
That's fair. That's fair. At least we both agree again who we're going to cut. That's all that matters.
Tommy says, careful. Day isn't afraid to hit an old guy, apparently.
He kind of said it.
See, Rob is trying to stir stuff up. Like, I just don't feel like we can put a current player on this. He's going
right.
Reggie Brooks, Julius Jones, Jeremiah Love. I don't.
Jeremiah Love's career is not over yet. It's an unfinished book.
Right.
So you can't go there, man.
Right.
Can't do it.
And like we've both worked with Reggie, so we've got some personal bias there as well.
This is true.
And Julius Jones, great at Notre Dame, good in the NFL with my team.
With the old Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. I avoided current Notre Dame players for a reason.
Agreed.
I just felt like it's just too much bias there because they're playing right now. All right, I'm going to hit Vince close to his heart with three former Chicago Cubs. Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber, Anthony Rizzo.
This is messed up. It's not cool. It's like making me choose between my own children. And this one actually may be harder than that, than choosing my own children. So I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off on this one. Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber. That's the order. Starter, bench, cut.
Wow. So you have a thing against good players? Is kind of what you're saying?
I have a thing against people that went to IU.
Oh, okay.
That's that literally. You know how when you have ties in like a conference and you have to go to like different tiebreakers and things like that? Like we're on like the 10th tiebreaker, and the 10th tiebreaker is that Kyle Schwarber went to IU, so he gets third. Like that's where I'm at with this whole thing.
That's fair. I'm going to go Kyle Schwarber, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo.
Okay.
Schwarber, and I think the Cubs obviously felt like this. It is a little bit amazing that of these three, Schwarber is the guy who's still dropping bombs right now. He's the most productive Major League Baseball player.
I know.
Between these three. Even though he was obviously a high draft pick, but the Cubs gave up on him way too early. They gave up on all three of these guys.
Yes.
Obviously, because they got cheap. Now, with Bryant and Rizzo, I feel like they're a little bit justified. Like when you look at the way their careers wound up.
Definitely with Bryant. Rizzo had a few good years in New York.
Yeah.
But it
you
was
can also say,
that
short porch and right helped him out there.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I still was hoping that they would sign him, have him as a bench player. I still want, like, of all those three guys, I wanted Rizzo back the most. And I think part of that is because he was the first of the three to be with the Cubs when they still sucked. Mm-hmm. So he was kind of like the building block that they kind of started to build around and like that whole thing. So I do have some empathy for him because he was there at the beginning. And then they started adding guys and adding guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it as well, which is why I put Rizzo at the top.
Okay, my last one today. Start bench cut. 3 Tom Cruise movies.
Oh, it's tough.
Jerry Maguire, Top Gun, A Few Good Men.
This is going to rattle some cages as well. Probably yours specifically. I am going to start A Few Good Men. I am going to bench Jerry Maguire, and I'm going to cut Top Gun. I said it.
Really?
I said it.
I never in a million years. Like, you like those two movies that much better than Top Gun.
See, here's the thing. I like Top Gun. I think Top Gun Maverick is so much better.
Wow.
The sequel was better than the orig for me. Yep. That's where I'm at.
I was going to, like, Mission Impossible was originally going to be on this list, but you haven't seen any of them. So
Correct.
There's no way that I can.
Yep. You're not wrong.
But I feel like these three right here are probably like Mount Rushmore of
Sure.
the Tom Cruise career, maybe along with, like, if you go Mission Impossible as a, like a series or whatever. Top Gun has to be at the top of the list. It is, to me, the most entertaining movie of the 1980s. Not the greatest movie, the most entertaining movie. Easily, for me, the most rewatchable. I can't imagine how many times I've actually seen Top Gun. The other two are a little bit tougher because they're, much more interesting and entertaining in different ways. But that's absolutely right, Joe Allen. You can't handle the truth. Just watch that full scene the other night. So Top Gun is my starter. A Few Good Men is my bench. Jerry Maguire is my cut.
Fair enough. I get it.
I like Jerry Maguire, but it's just like, and it's aged fairly well, but like as a movie, A Few Good Men.
The only problem with Jerry Maguire is it's a little long.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
In length. Like, I like the movie. I like a lot of them, like a lot parts of that movie. Like they could have sucked some of the air out of it though. Like they spent a little bit too much time on the love interest, Renee Zellweger and that. Like, they could have taken some air out there. If they would have done that, it would have been a really, really, really good movie. I still can't get past the love interest in Top Gun. It looks like she's 20 years older than he is. And I can't get past it.
It's true.
I just, not that there isn't even a love interest, obviously, in A Few Good Men. I mean, Demi Moore is obviously not hard to look at, but
But it's amazing, like, how bad her hair is in that, like, the hairstyle that they've got her in. Demi Moore.
Yeah, agreed.
I saw part of Risky Business the other night too, Brian.
Oh, Risky Business, good movie though.
Yeah, it is.
That's a good movie. That is a movie that would not fly today.
That's true. They're not making Risky Business today.
No, they're not.
That's for sure.
No, they're not.
DJ wants to know why it didn't include Reacher. I think Reacher is solid, but I just like these three. I would say these three and then Risky Business would be my top 4 Tom Cruise movies. And then I would probably put Cocktail at number 5.
Cocktail is a solid. Yeah. We may have to do a Tom Cruise movie.
There are other tiers of Tom Cruise. We might have to do like a Tom Cruise pyramid.
That's what I'm saying.
At some point.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I would say Cocktail is like top tier. It's a top tier one for me. You add in, first of all, just the ability to do what they were doing, like and then you just throw in Elizabeth Shue, Elizabeth Shue will take any movie to the next level.
Cocktails and Dreams. That's right.
I'm just saying.
That's right. Brian says The Outsiders. Like, Outsiders, great classic movie and all that. I've never considered it a Tom Cruise movie, though. Right. It's such an ensemble because you had so many great young actors. He was in it, but I wouldn't consider it a Tom Cruise movie if you get, kind of the differentiation.
No, absolutely. Joe Allen also said Meg Ryan was way better looking in Top Gun than Kelly McGillis.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. 100% correct.
Could they have pulled it off if they had made Meg Ryan the love interest instead?
Yes.
Did she just, was she too young maybe to be in that position? Because she was supposed to be kind of a, woman of authority, military,
possibly
not in the military, but a contract, civilian contractor and all that kind of stuff.
It takes some time to get to that spot, but I would have believed it. I don't care.
I think a lot of people would have.
I'm in.
Michelle Pfeiffer, that would have been
right. That I just feel like I've seen something that showed the various people that
Rob agrees. Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah,
there were other people in the running for that particular part, and I can't remember who the names were, but I'm sorry, Kelly. I just feel like there were better options.
I agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Joe Shane and the New York Giants are going to be back on HBO's Hard Knocks this season as part of their in-season edition of the show that is going to feature all 4 NFC East teams: the Giants, Cowboys, Commanders, and Eagles.
Hard Knocks has been overplayed. It's time to move on to something else. That's how I feel.
So you're totally out on Hard Knocks. Huh?
I have never seen a single episode of Hard Knocks because I can't afford HBO.
Well, how do you know it's overplayed if you've never seen
hear
a
about it all the
episode?
time, and they're just redoing teams. It's like, you know.
I thought they did this division thing for the first time last year, and they did the AFC North with the Steelers, the Bengals, the Browns, the Ravens. And I thought it was a pretty cool little spin on things to sort of bounce around, from one team to the next.
Totally selfish on my part because I can't watch it, and so if I can't watch it, then nobody should be able to watch it.
I get you.
That's where I'm at. Because I love documentaries when it comes to sports teams.
Yeah,
I love it. Like I love watching like Welcome to Wrexham and like things like that. And they, I believe Amazon Prime did one a couple of seasons in a row where they followed a team all season long. Like, yes, like John Hamm, I think was like the narrator of it. Like,
I think they did the Cowboys a few years back.
Yeah, sign me up for some John Hamm narrated football documentary. Like, yes, sir, I'm there.
Okay.
So yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Just again, if I can't watch it, nobody can.
I just think that it's like the Giants specifically because of the whole Saquon Barkley thing that came up. Because remember, the Giants basically like resisted ever doing Hard Knocks because the NFL can make teams do it if they really want to, but they didn't do it. Like 20 plus years goes by, and so then they're like, "Ooh, we're celebrating the franchise's 100th anniversary, so we're gonna do Hard Knocks," and they get the first ever off-season edition, and it totally blows up in their face because you've got on camera Shane with his like the poor handling of Saquon Barkley and the whole thing, and John Mara's in the room, the owner, and everything is caught on tape after they had never done it, and so now. A year later, I guess a year and a half by the time that airs, they're going to be back on this. So
wild.
I wonder if Joe Shane goes running from the camera and make sure that he is never on camera. So I think it's hilarious, but I like the full division.
Yeah,
thing. I think it's like a new, a nice little new spin on the whole thing. Okay, Vince, ESPN is televising several of the Savannah Bananas games at Major League ballparks this summer. Scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in the Savannah Bananas?
Like a 1.5, 2. Like this is a situation where if somebody handed me tickets, I don't think I would go. It's just too much. It's too much of a circus for me. Yep. I don't need to be like, I love the game of baseball. I'm going to the Tigers-Cubs game on Sunday, and I'm really excited about it because I like to grab my scorecard. I like to watch the game, like watch a baseball game. I'm in. Like the whole concept of the Savannah Bananas is that baseball is boring and it needs to be entertaining.
It needs to be,
no.
I don't need all that.
I don't
need all that at all. I completely agree. I am in.
I don't need dancing umpires and a guy on stilts. And
I might go if someone gave me tickets, but from what I understand, tickets to these things are like way more expensive than a regular baseball game.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
I don't need to see guys dancing around in the batter's box or on the pitcher's mound. And
it's just
apparently you hit a foul ball and if a fan catches it in the stands, it's an out or something.
Yes.
Like that. Yeah. Don't need it. Don't need it.
I want regular baseball.
Beefeater says no assigned seats, total chaos. Great for the kids.
And I'm sure it is great for the kids. And
not for adults, though.
To Tommy's point, he says, how do you feel the same way about the Globetrotters? Great for kids. I have no desire to go watch the Harlem Globetrotters as an adult because it's a staged act. Yeah. And that's what the Savannah Bananas are. Now, you may not know what the outcome of the actual game is going to be. Okay. I'm not a fan of either one. I like taking my kids to it. Sure.
Yeah. That's who it's geared for. It's geared towards kids. But again, think about how expensive the tickets are. Like,
correct.
Is that really family friendly when you're charging over $100 of tickets to get, 4 kids in the gate? Like
hard pass.
Pushing the $1,000 if you take a whole family by the time it's all.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
I've watched a lot.
Maybe we're old fuddy duddies. I don't know. But you've got young kids too. So
and look here, and the thing is, they're not that young anymore. I guarantee I have 4 teenagers, and they would not enjoy going to the Savannah Bananas game. I don't think. So yeah, I just I've watched documentaries on them, and it's really cool what he was able to do and it was like all his brainchild. And he's kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
like
the fact that some guy was able to come up with this idea and turn it into a thing, great for him.
100%.
Like they're probably at their peak right now. How long this lasts? Like, will baseball's edition of the Harlem Globetrotters, will it still be going 50, 60 years from now? Like,
right.
Because like the Harlem Globetrotters themselves, like when did they start? Maybe in the 1950s or something.
It's been a long
like
time.
that. Like I remember, like Curly Neal and Meadowlark Lemon, like two of the originals.
Yeah.
I saw when I was a kid still.
Yes. And I went to the Harlem Globetrotters when I was a kid, and I had a great time. And I took my son, my oldest son, when he was a little kid. He had a great time. But yeah, I just wouldn't do it.
Totally in with the old man. Couldn't agree with you more on this.
I love it. Welcome to the old man club.
That's right.
Like I said, I'm looking forward to going to an actual baseball game this weekend. Like that, I am so looking forward to that. So looking forward to it.
I went to my first game of the season last week. Jesse did as well, and it sounds like you're going to your first one.
Yep. Really looking forward to it. Going into hostile territory with my Cubs jersey on.
There you go, baby.
I'm excited.
There you go. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with that. I hope you had a good time doing a little start bench cut with us today. Like I said, I'll put my nose to the grindstone and I'll come up with some new ones, and maybe we'll do some more in a few weeks. Have to try to slip in all the ones that everybody thought we left out.
Right.
So
people got to understand the name of the game. It's not about best ever. That's not the game.
That's right. Do you agree? Like avoid current guys? Avoid the current ones.
I want yes, avoid the current for sure, because there's definitely bias and their book isn't written. So like that I'm in on that. And then the goal is to have three guys that are very similar so that we get to argue about it a little bit.
That's right.
You don't want to make it obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody seems to be in agreement. Hit the like button before you leave and help us out, of course. And we will talk to you on tomorrow's show on Ivy Nation Sports Talk.